I'm Andrew Jensen. I am the AV specialist at GCFA. My roots come from the East Ohio Annual Conference, where I started running camera at conference as any good board pastor's kid does. Since then, I've directed 10 annual conferences, one jurisdictional conference, and two general conferences, as well as doing some events for a couple of the largest companies in America. So I'm going to start by sharing a few quick tips, and then we'll have some discussion, as Jackie said. And I imagine that you already know most of these things, and I'm not going to shatter anyone's world, but as an event director, it's my role to bring all of these pieces together and to create the smoothest event possible. So here are some tips for a successful event. And spoiler alert, these also apply to live events. They're not just virtual event tips. So a lot of my clients are trying to take what they did in person and they're trying to fit it into the virtual world. The problem is that the reason you did things a certain way in the past at your live events is because you're at a live event. So if possible, it's best to think all the way to the end and what your end goal is, and to start there and work your way backwards. So for example, let's talk about a clergy retirement service for a minute. The typical service that I've seen clergy walk across the stage while their bio's read, they shake the hand of the bishop, they get a certificate, and they go sit back down. Now, when converting this to a virtual event, you might immediately try to make a video where there's a voiceover that reads the bio, and we look at pictures of the clergy person and maybe their spouse. And this might be the best idea for a video, but what I'm urging you to do is to shift your thinking a little bit and start by saying, our goal here is to honor the years of service that this clergy person gave. So what is the best way we can do that? It's a subtle change, and you might end up in the exact same place with the same video, but it makes a big difference across the event if you're trying to fit what you did into a new space, realizing the purpose of what you did and making it best in the current environment. So really focusing on why we're doing what we're doing and how to do it best in our new environment. Now, the next topic is people will not be able to participate. And it's our goal to remove any roadblocks preventing anyone from being able to fully participate in our virtual events. But the fact is that some people are really tech savvy, some people not so much, and they're going to have some issues with technology, and they'll struggle. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I've been interrupted while trying to run a virtual event because one person is having a technical issue. And yet, when I direct live events, I have yet for anyone to burst into wherever I'm directing the event from and say, so-and-so got a flat tire and didn't make it into the audience, so we're gonna have to hold up the event. Or, so-and-so couldn't get the funds to get hotel and food for conference, so they're not here, so we can't do the event. So again, it's important to include everyone, and it would be smart to have a couple people working on technical issues, kind of like a help desk type scenario. But I just want you to think about the fact that in-person events, they have roadblocks too that have prevented people from being able to fully attend the event. And so don't get so hung up on one or two issues that it takes down what you're doing with the main event. And then the last kind of change in mindset tip I'll give you is to pre-record when possible. And I'm not going to dwell on this, but the bottom line is if you have a reason for it to be live, great. Go ahead and do it live if there's interaction, but it's better to pre-record it if you can. So there's some changed mindset. So next we're gonna talk about rehearsal. So rehearse. Rehearsals are not optional. They are key to everyone's success. Presenters and tech team need to feel comfortable with the technology, and nothing divides a production team for a live event faster than having issues and placing blame. And to that point, make sure you are talking to presenters about what to do if there is a technical glitch. Give them a sentence or two to say, give them a contact person to reach out to. And I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit more here in a couple slides, but just really just rehearsals are very important. Everyone needs to feel comfortable because, not that we're some sort of, massive life-ending thing if something goes wrong, but if we rehearsed what we do, okay, what do I do if XYZ happens, then I'm less likely to get super flustered and just make it worse than it already is. So next I'm going to talk about creating a detailed schedule. And if any of you saw my tips video, some of these are tips that I put in that video. So creating a detailed schedule. A good production schedule is key to any event. This helps your team synchronize throughout the event. The schedule you produce should be detailed to the minute and also include transition times between presenters and virtual breaks. Producing a schedule this detailed may cause some anxiety, but pre-planning work will reduce the stress and anxiety during your virtual event. When, not if, hear me say that, when, not if, you deviate from the schedule, you will know that what was missed, and it'll help you get back on track with the rest of your agenda. So I threw this together. This is a format that I use a lot for live events. So I just threw some things on here, and I just want to go over. This is a formatting that I use. It's really simple. I use Excel for most of the events I do. There are some other options out there that are really cool and costly, but they also depend on internet connection. And we tried that at General Conference 2016, and instantly, we weren't even to the official day one. In the middle of the rehearsal day, so we went back to paper copies because it just wasn't, the internet connection wasn't where we needed to be. So just going across this, on the left side, I have line items. And so this is just say, if somebody says, oh, where are we on the schedule? We're at line 6. It's just that simple. It's a reference point. Time of day, this obviously helps you to know if you're running ahead or behind. If you don't use this column, things have a way of compounding at the end of the day. So you can feel like, oh, this presentation only went 2 minutes over. But if that was the 4th presentation that went over, by the time you hit the end of the day, which is the time that everybody already starts tuning out, you're going to be running long. So this is another reason to pre-record. You'll know exactly how long things are. And if you have a pre-recorded segment that, let's say we're running a couple minutes behind, and we have this pre-recorded segment that doesn't need to go in today. It's maybe a piece of information. We could pull that segment, get back on track, play that video at a later time, and you're not going to lose anything. It's not disrespectful to a presenter who's there and prepared and ready to go. This is something that we can put in at another time. The information will stay the same, and it won't really affect what's going on there. So that's a little tip. Total runtime TRT, so that's just how long things go. It's important to have that column separate from the time of day because let's say a presenter is given 12 minutes, just because the person before them ran 2 minutes long doesn't mean they only have 10 minutes. So it makes your time of day, it makes your time of day column inaccurate. And so like for instance, when we do general conference, we're running timers, and we know that presenter on stage from the moment they started talking, how long they've been presenting. And so this can help. And again, some of this might not apply based on your schedule. Some of you will have aggressive schedules trying to fit a lot in a very short time, and others will have, a little bit of time to play with. Title, self-explanatory. Notes, I often I'll put the script title in the notes, and then in my binder that I do all this in, I have a tab with all the scripts. And then I do a column for each production department. So if you're the graphics operator and I tell you we're on line 2, you know that you need to be having a lower third up. And you can always look one thing ahead and know, okay. And even on the lights column, I just kind of threw this together, but there might be certain preset numbers that we put in there, and that won't affect your virtual event. But just really thinking that way, if each person that has a responsibility has a column and they know I need to be one line ahead in my column and know what's coming up. And again, for graphics like welcome_V3, that might be a video. So they know, okay, I need to be prepared to play the welcome video version 3. Okay, so moving on. So a backup plan. Always have a backup plan. If something happens, say the internet connection for a presenter drops out, or the bishop needs a restroom break, you always want to have, always want to know what you can do to help pass that time. So under backup plan, these are 3 ideas, key points. Having videos, maybe highlighting ministries of your conference. Think like a camp's promotion video that's just a few minutes long. That might be all you need to get through whatever you're in the middle of. But if you go to a blank slide, having difficulties, or just if it just goes quiet and sits there while everybody's regrouping, people still start getting agitated. And I'm sure you're quite aware that in a virtual setting, people are quick to that chat box if you enable it. That's a different discussion, but they're quick to, hey, this isn't working, hey, this is that. So if you have something that's a video that's moving, that can kind of hold them over, that's going to help you succeed in that space. So having a page of pre-written responses available for whoever is on camera to jump to. We're talking bishops, we're talking presenters, anybody that's on camera, knowing, hey, if something happens, this is what I can say to keep things moving. And then an alternate host, always having someone in the call with a connection ready to jump on if needed. So like if a presenter's connection drops or a bishop's connection drops, or if you just need somebody to say, hey, we're about to take a 5-minute break while we figure this out and we'll be right back. You just want to have that person there and ready and available to do that. So clear channels of communications, this is huge. In preparation for this, I know a lot of conferences are using Good News TV. So I'm friends with them. I reached out and I said, hey, let's talk a little bit about, I'm doing this, and I ran what I'm going to talk about today with them. And this is something they wanted me to just reiterate. Everybody should know who they're talking to. This is probably new for your bishop, so we want to take as much off of their plate as possible. So my experience with annual conference is that the bishop has a team of people supporting them, and a virtual event is no different. What is different is that a lot of people tend to have the bishop's email address and phone number and might feel the urge to reach out to them if something is going awry. And so what we want to do is have everybody, staff, everybody know who they're talking to, so that the bishop only has a couple points of contact that they need to monitor. So I just threw this together. This will be different for everybody's annual conference. This is really not about power or dynamics. It's just other than the bishop needs to know who they're looking to for their information. We do this for general conference. I mean, we rotate presiding bishops, but there's a tree of, this person only talks to these couple people. So if somebody else comes up to that person and says, hey, I need you to do this, they might not jump on that because you're not supposed to be the person that's telling me to do these things. And again, there's nothing secretive, or it's strictly for efficiency and to help empower everybody to do their best work. So I threw this together. You have the bishop, they might have their bishop's assistants and the conference secretary talking to them. And the conference secretary, for instance, might be monitoring the chat and voting results and passing that along to the bishop. Or maybe the bishop will want to see those directly. That's fine. And then event producer, that'd be like my role when I work a lot of annual conferences. I'll be the event producer, so I'll be coordinating all of production, and then I'll talk to the communications director, and then so on. So just a few ideas of applications you can use: Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp, and Slack. These apps all allow you to create sort of like it's a group chat. They allow you to create a group chat, name that group chat. So you could have one that's the communications team, one that's the voting team, and that way anyone that needs to can hop in there and state what they need to that specific team. I do not recommend using, like most people are using Zoom webinar for their conferences. I do not recommend using the chat function, even though you can talk between just panelists. There's always that danger, and it happens, of accidentally posting into the chat for all the spectators just to see whatever you meant for just one other person or what your internal team. Even if you disable the chat for spectators to actively type, they can still end up seeing a message that wasn't intended for them. And then one role that I really want to push is a media manager. I put that at the bottom here. This can be the communications director, but there needs to be one point person that gets all of the media and approves all of the media. And so going back to general conference, when we get media for general conference and we put a deadline out there, and most people don't hit it, but we really urge them to, we go through it. We make sure that the resolution is right, that the text is going to be able to be seen. We watch the videos and make sure there's no issues, that you can hear everything. We do all of that ahead of time. And then we have that one person that controls that media. So if there's a new version, because it never fails, a presenter says, oh, I made tweaks last night, I want to use this version instead. And they'll email it. So they'll be about to walk on the stage and they'll say, well, I emailed it to you 30 minutes ago. And it's like, well, okay, I'm doing this, I'm not checking my email necessarily right this second, or so on. So to have a person that's that point person that knows what's the most current version of presentation and is responsible for getting that to the production team. Having that one person is really, really key. Now I want to talk about two difficult topics and then I'm done with my part. So screen people talking and screening comments. This is when a bishop is presiding many times. I've been in some annual conferences where they have a system where they know what order people are at the microphones, and so they call on them. But let's be real, we've been around the block. We know that there are sometimes conversations that are derailing us and keeping us from moving forward on the actual subject. And so just think of that when you're thinking about how you're going to handle your channel of communication from the people participating remotely to the leadership. Think about having the bishop sitting there reading the whole chat window themselves. It's probably not going to be beneficial, probably not going to be successful. And so you'll probably want that team of people that are helping to moderate that and pass those messages along. And then the other thing I'll talk about real quick is controversial votes. Voting remotely has all sorts of issues, but again, it kind of comes back to the whole meeting in person thing. We met in person at General Conference 2019 special session, and we ended that with voting controversy. And that was people in person sitting next to each other. So to think that we can do remote electronic voting without any controversy, I don't think that's realistic. I think that if someone doesn't like the way a vote goes, that they're have every right, but they also might question, the results of that vote. So you might, as you plan your conference, think about what are those controversial things, because we know that there's tons of legislation that's just going to pass overwhelmingly. And so that's easy to do virtually. I mean, you can just crank right through those, people agree, we move on. But there might be things that are controversial. And so we want to make sure that we're spending money, time, and energy into this event. We want to make sure that the results of this event are going to be honored and upheld. So just really think about that as you think about your voting. So event producing is a service that I offer through GCFA to the denomination. So if you're interested in that service or training, I can go more in depth on this stuff. We can do some training with your event production for your team. Just reach out to Jackie or myself, and we can help get that planned.